Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever you are listening to our daily podcast. Today, Daily FC Bournemouth / Daily Brentford. We are joined by our friend, colleague Dan from Brentford. How are you, Dan?
I'm all good. I'll be there at the weekend, so looking forward to this and looking forward to the next half an hour.
You will be at the game?
I'll be there, yeah, in the away end. It's quite hard to get tickets for Bournemouth because obviously you've got probably the smallest away end in the divisions, only the only one smaller than ours, I think. So, yeah, I'm in the lucky number of fans who have enough loyalty points to get a ticket to Bournemouth away.
You do know that this means we are having a pint before and after. So, loser pays the drinks, right?
Yeah, sure. Why not? We've been in good away form recently, so you never know.
Good, and we are chasing Europe, so it's going to be hell of a game. Right, before we dive into this great story today, we do have to mention that this podcast is a part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. It's a unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. So subscribe whenever you get your podcast and make us your first listen, if you can, every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day.
Every club. Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
And as I've always been, gentlemen, I'll let you talk, Daniel. So, a big game on Saturday, and you are coming down. This is something obviously you didn't tell before we started recording. So I'm glad because there's more things to talk about, right? And I can approach more directly because I'll be seeing you Saturday in person. So our last game away, you've beaten us 3-2. Lucky, you always play good in your stadium. I think you were on 7. Yeah, so when we played you haven't lost a home game yet.
Yes, we've lost a lot of them now in recent weeks, so it's kind of turned around. I think, not Bournemouth aside, earlier in the season we played the likes of Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton, Wolves. All the bottom 7 or 8 visited the G-Tech. So apart from Bournemouth and Newcastle, who we also beat at home, within that run, we didn't play too many top half teams. We didn't play too many quality teams. And I think that's why in recent months, so we've now won 4 away games in a row and we're winless in 7 home games. So I think, and I was saying it at the time as well, I think part of the reason for that run and the reversal of that run is simply the teams that we've played. We've been very good this season against those bottom 5 or 6 teams. We've beaten all of them. The only one we didn't beat was Everton away, but that was when we had 10 men for more than 45 minutes earlier in the season, and we still came away with a draw. So we've done very well on that front. I think we've struggled a bit more against the top half teams this season. I think only really Newcastle at home. We did really well against Newcastle 1-4-2, and then against yourselves at home. But we do have, over the years, especially in the Premier League years so far, we do tend to have a good record against yourselves. So what's disappointed me, I guess, is the fact that we are not getting necessarily the results against most of the other top half teams. That's what's separating us. There's a little bit of a gap above us in the table and that big group of teams which Bournemouth are involved in.
And I'm glad to hear that because we are now in the top half. We weren't at the time when we played you, but we are now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's so many teams in that area of the table, and we've been about 4 or 5 points now behind that group for quite some time, and we're just not getting the results. So we played Aston Villa last week. If we had beaten them, we would have been right on the back of that group and right on the back of Aston Villa. But we weren't able to do so, and I guess that's been the frustration. There's a risk at the moment of Brentford season petering out, particularly if we don't get anything again this weekend. Because we just won't be able to catch up to that group and give ourselves a fight towards the European places. So it'd be nice to get a win and see if we can get into that conversation. Otherwise, looks like the season might be petering out for us, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we are where we are.
You are where you are, and we are where we are. I mean, it's funny how one game can cost you dropping 3 places below on the table, and seeing now, Bournemouth sitting at ninth position with 44, and then Newcastle and Man City being 3-4 positions above with only 3 points difference, which is just one win basically. It's mad. It's mad, and it just shows how close every team is. To get to that European spot and all that. For Bournemouth, obviously, that would be a dream because we've never played Europe before, and we'd like to have an extra reason to go and travel. I'm not going to lie. With 29 destinations from Bournemouth Airport, I'm sure there will be some flights available to one of the countries that hopefully Bournemouth will play in. Um, and hopefully in conference. I'm always saying I'm happy with conference. Champions League, Europa League might be a bit tough for us because we haven't got that squad depth. But conference, we might be able to do something as well. I don't know. For now, we need to focus on Premier League, on getting the next few games, getting as many points as we can. Obviously, Brentford, our record with you guys, wow. Considering last 5 games, you won 3. Um, 2 of them were draw, so we didn't win in the last 5 games against you, right? Last 3, we've seen plenty of goals. All of them, at least 3 goals in the game. The good thing, Bournemouth managed to score 2 goals away against you, and with the form this season, I think we can score another 2 on Saturday.
Maybe we can
Playing
score
in
another 3.
Playing in Vitality is not easy, and I've spoken to one of our players actually from Bournemouth, and he said it when he used to play for his old club, and every time he would play away in Bournemouth, it would be scary. Have you ever been to Vitality before?
Yeah, so I was there last season, and it was really towards the end of the season last year. So it was a real sunny day. It felt almost like a close season friendly. I think both clubs didn't have much to play for at that point. We had just mathematically secured survival a week or two before. So it was fun. It was a fun afternoon. I recall all 3 of the goals are in the last
In the
5 or
last
so
couple
minutes of
minutes,
the
yeah.
game. I think, yeah,
Don't
Wissa and
forget that
Bruno scored
we
for
got again our goal disallowed by VAR. It happened because we were 1-0 up in the
yes,
first half.
earlier on, yeah.
Handball. Yeah, so God knows how many. Because it's funny, we were looking at me and my colleague Dan, who's one of the other hosts for our daily FC Bournemouth. We were looking at the stats and the table. Where would Bournemouth be sitting in which position if there was no VAR overturned decisions? And guess what? We would have been third, not nine. We would have been third, but it seems like VAR is working more in favor of bigger teams. And I'm talking also about Brentford as well. Like if you were to play against Liverpool or Chelsea or Arsenal, you're more likely to get your decision overturned and goal ruled out. Am I right?
Perhaps I don't really like to buy these theories. I think you could find a narrative to fit a lot of things if you wanted to. I don't think there's any referee or VAR who genuinely goes out there to try and influence the game in any wrong way. I think they're trying to make the right decisions. I think the issue is there is a lack of consistency. There are certain decisions, like for example, last week against Aston Villa, there were 2 quite good shouts of Brentford penalties in that second half, and I suspect they're decisions that if the referee on the pitch gives it, they stay given. But because VAR, for whatever reason, determined that it's not clear and obvious, they won't intervene. But and then like I said, on another day we could have had another referee who gives those penalties, and we could come out of a 2-1 win. So I don't think there's any kind of bias or agenda. Perhaps if we're really going down that route, perhaps referees can be a bit intimidated if they're at, say, Anfield, for example. But you would hope, with the level of experience of a lot of the Premier League referees, a lot of them have been around for quite a few years now. You'd hope they wouldn't let something like that get to them. But who really knows subconsciously what impact that has on the referee?
Do you think the VAR now, let's say over the last couple of years, has sort of, I'm not going to say changed, but has affected the referees' decisions and maybe made them a bit weaker to sort of make them rely more on the VAR rather than their own decisions?
Yeah, I can see the argument for that. I think it might even be a subconscious thing, but maybe in the back of their mind, when Disasi shoves Sharda over last week in the penalty area against Aston Villa,
Yeah.
is the referee thinking, I could give that, but I'm not sure, I'm not quite sure, so I'm not going to make that decision. And then VAR looks at it, and they probably agree that that could be a penalty, but they don't feel that there's enough to intervene, and then maybe you get less of those given, particularly, maybe at a smaller stadium when there might not be as much pressure on the referee to give it, or they feel that way anyway. So perhaps it shouldn't be the case. I think maybe it needs changing. I've heard some people say that there should be an appeal system. So say like tennis, when you
Yeah,
can
like a challenge, yeah.
challenge a call, yeah, and if you successfully challenge it, and it shouldn't be judged on whether it's a clear and obvious error, it should just be judged on whether this is a penalty or whether it's not a penalty. And obviously, if you're successful in the challenge, you keep that challenge. Perhaps that's the way they should look to go forward in the future. But I think ultimately, any system that they end up adopting, if it does change, there will be people who criticize it, and there will be wrong decisions every now and then. I'm afraid that's just how it's got to work, I think.
Yeah, but now I want to go back to the part where you said that they feel less pressure in a smaller stadium. Does that mean because Bournemouth has the smallest stadium in the Premier League? Does that mean that this is the reason why we get so many decisions overturned, not in our favour?
It's not Bournemouth in particular. I think Brentford. We're probably the second smallest stadium in the Premier League. It's not known necessarily to be a really intimidating place to go. So I just think perhaps I would like to hope that is not a factor at all, and I don't think it should be for an experienced referee who's been doing this for years. I don't think they should be influenced by outside things like that, but you never know if there's a small percentage that does subconsciously, make them give a snap decision. These things happen quickly. And sometimes it's very hard to be very, very sure. You can see how it's hard to be very, very sure when the game's moving at pace, whether something is a penalty or not. And, is there just that extra little percentage somewhere that causes them to give it at certain places over others? But yeah, I'm not usually one to go heavy on referee criticism. I do think sometimes you are on the receiving end of a bad decision. Sometimes it could go the other way. Yes, Bournemouth may have been, like you say,
Bullied.
bullied this season. If you take that over a 10 season average, there's probably other seasons where you may have benefited from referee decisions. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
that was before the VAR, maybe.
yeah. How many of those VAR decisions were correct though? If a lot of them were correct, then what can we really say?
No, well, yeah, but talking about correct, at the end of the day, what is correct? What are you going to base the VAR decision on? We could record just an episode talking about the VAR, right?
I think the red card for, is it Zabani? I think that was
Zabani.
harsh. I think that was harsh from what I remember.
There was no intention.
Yeah.
There was his foot slipped over the ball, rolled over the ball. There was no intention. We appealed. Nothing. He got 3 games, but then Lewis Kelly's challenge, they appealed and they got 1 game ban. So it only talks about how powerful the big clubs are, right? But
We've had one overturned this season. We had when Norgard got sent off at Everton, we had that overturned a few days later, which I was quite surprised about. Actually, I didn't think they would overturn it, but they did.
Well, you're a club from London, so you consider it as a bit bigger club.
Here we go.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about just to quickly mention the last game that we had against you. Well, we lost 3-2. But before that, we do have to do a quick message from our sponsors. So, dear listeners, stay tuned.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description below to learn more about Zencastr.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Right. So to quickly go through the last game, where you came from behind, the bees came from behind. We were twice in the lead, and somehow, you managed to get the most out of that game, and you go, well, 3 points. Have you been at the game?
I think when our front four is on it, I think we can score goals against anyone, and that's Sharda, Wissa, and Boomer and Damsgaard in behind. I think Damsgaard, especially this season, has been so good. He's second or third in the assist chart. He's really come out of nowhere compared to where he was last season. Obviously, everyone knows him for the Euros a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And he's had injuries. He had injuries immediately after that. Ended up signing for us. Took a while to get going, and now I think he's easily our best player this season. And with the likes of Mbeumo ahead of him, and the likes of Wissa and even Sharda, there's plenty of him to work off in terms of setting free those forwards. I mean, in terms of that game, Wissa scored a really good goal that day. Brian and Primo probably scored as well. They tend to score together. I remember there being a really good dummy, I think, from...
That was from Damsgaard.
Was it Damsgaard? And then I think...
Yeah. So it was Vissa scored 2, and then Damsgaard scored 1.
Yeah,
so,
Damsgaard scored, yeah.
Mbeumo had Mbeumo had an assist, and Janel had an assist as well. It was a good game, and yes, you were better. I mean, we we couldn't chase. You chased our score, you got it, and you won. You were just better on the day. And I think Brentford, as I mentioned earlier, you were on a 7. I think it was your 7th game that you were unbeaten at home. And it was just, when you go with that mentality to play against someone, it was the same like we were on 11 game run unbeaten. It was crazy, and we could just beat anyone. We've beaten City, we've beaten Arsenal, we got the unlucky draw against Villa. So, but talking about now, where we are now, and looking at the last season as well, where we were when we played each other, you're only 6 points away from us. So,
yeah, it feels like a bigger gap. I mean, we've been 11th or 12th for so long now. We've never really been in danger of going down. So we've been quite comfortable. We've been beating generally the teams below us and not doing so well generally against teams above us. I think there's just so many teams in that conversation around where Bournemouth are. We've always been 3 or 4 points away, at least. And I think we need to really close that gap. Those teams win games quite often, which is why they're in the top 8 or 10. And we just haven't shown the consistency to really bridge that gap. So the gap has been that for quite a while. I think the reason we're only 6 behind you is probably because you've not won in the last few as well. But yeah, it's that group in general we're trying to chase down. And I wouldn't be surprised if we turned up on Saturday and got a good result, but I don't think ultimately we'll have the consistency to back that up when it comes to playing a lot of the other teams in and around that group, because we've got Newcastle next and then Chelsea after that. So we've got to play a lot of teams in that group now, and I think we'll win the odd one, but I just don't think we'll have the consistency to really bridge that gap. But like Bournemouth, we've never been in Europe before. We're similar sized clubs, and it would be amazing for that to happen to Brentford. So, if it happened to Bournemouth, I'd resonate with how you'd feel about that. And, I'd be happy for a club who don't usually get into Europe to do it, because,
to
the
do
likes
it,
of
yeah.
Chelsea being in the Conference League this season is pretty pointless. That they'll probably win it. Their fans don't really care too much about being there, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
And
well, they like to win, so they're like, "Oh yes, we won the Conference League." It doesn't matter that we're a club that could easily win the Champions League, maybe, but yeah, let's just play. Let's win what we can, right?
yeah, it's a good opportunity, isn't it? That Conference League, it is a great opportunity for any like mid-table
Underdog
Premier League
teams.
side, because
Yeah,
whoever gets there from the Premier League should be one of the strongest teams in that competition, even if it
yeah,
is someone like Bournemouth or Brentford. And the just the thought of being able to go on a journey like that and actually having a good chance of going deep into the tournament is, something that
it's
didn't
mental.
actually
Yeah,
exist a few years ago. So
yeah,
it's really, really exciting to see. Obviously, we've seen it with West Ham, and I do
yeah.
think it will be beyond our reach this season. But, we go again next year. I think it's a target of ours at some stage in the next few years.
I mean, I was looking at the schedule as well that Bournemouth has, and we've got Ipswich, Fulham, and West Ham after playing the FA Cup against City. Obviously, we do have this international break in between where myself will be traveling to Vienna to watch the Nations League match of Austria versus Serbia. So that's going to be a fun experience, and I can't wait for it. And obviously, upon my return, there's the City coming again. Can we beat them again? This is the question. We'd love to be able to see the Cherries playing in Wembley, in the next stage. Why not? Why not? I mean, City's been, I can say, awful this season. Obviously, they dropped the points early, and there's barely any chance for them to win the Premier League. Mathematically, probably, but we know it's not going to happen. So. Yeah, but talking about you guys, I mean, you're still above Tottenham and Man United, which is, which are two teams that have won. Well, not Tottenham, but Man United have won Champions League in the past, have won the Europa League, and they've got the history. Tottenham as a club, we've played them the last game. We were 2-0 up. We dropped 3 points there. I don't know how. And at the end, um, we were lucky to get a draw as well because we just stopped playing. And yeah, Tottenham wasn't a team that could beat us. But on the other hand, seeing that Bournemouth as a very small club, dominating Tottenham in their stadium, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It's
I think it's been good season for Brentford, but it could have been a better season. There's teams in the league such as Forest, such as yourselves, who are having a really, really good season. So I think we're having a good season. There's nothing wrong with it. Survival is always the first aim. We've been in no danger of ever looking
But
over
you
our
were
shoulder this season.
consistent. You were since you came into Premier League. You were consistent. You were always somewhere mid-table, right? There was barely even any danger. Like last season, okay. I think last season you were probably the closest to sort of get maybe
Yeah,
relegated.
we were
But
never in it. We've never ever finished a weekend in the relegation zone since we got promoted, because we beat Arsenal on the first day and we never looked back. So yeah,
there you go.
last season was the closest. We've never been in it. I think that's always a positive, particularly when you look nowadays. The teams coming up really struggling every year, looking like they're going to go down again. The same three, so we can't
Yeah,
underestimate that.
I mean, look at what happened to Luton. They haven't lost many players though when they got relegated, but it seems like they're going to be relegated again now from Championship to League One. What happened to Luton? Like it's crazy, and the club that actually has beaten Bournemouth last season 2-1 near the end of the season to try and secure their stay. Look at them now. I mean, it's so weird. It's so weird. But luckily, both of our teams are safe. So we won't be looking into championship for the next season, and we won't be mentioning championship because we know we are safe now, right? Um, Before we do the score predictions, the team predictions, and the star players predictions, we do have another message from our other sponsor. So, people, listeners, stay tuned.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Right, so this weekend's game, 5:30, a late one. I don't know. The hot stat for you, right? 5 of Bournemouth's last 6 league fixtures produced exactly one first half goal. Will Bournemouth have the first half lead? I believe if we score in the first half, we got the game. We got the game. If we let you score first, yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I'd say from our side, we've got Evan Nilsson back. We needed him. We needed him so desperately. And yeah, 100% he will start the game. Sinisterra slowly getting back. He's still coming on as a sub. But yeah, a great super sub for us anyway. I'll start with our team prediction. Obviously, we'll probably play again with 4-2-3-1. We most of the time do play. Christie's a question mark, whether he'll play or not. I'd say Kepa in goal, Kerker's left, Housen, Zabani's back. So Housen and Zabani, centre-backs. James Hill will probably go on the right. Now, if Christie will be a question mark, then probably Cook and Adams will be playing in the middle. If Christie does play, I expect him to start with Lewis Cook and leave Adams on the bench. On the left, we'll probably see Tavernier. Yeah, I'd go for Tavernier. Clivert in the middle, Semenyo on the right, and Evan Nilsson up front. And that will be our starting 11 for Saturday. And hopefully we'll get 3-1 win. I can't see keeping a clean sheet against you guys because Mbeumo is just lethal. Him and Wisa are just lethal, and if they both play, it's going to be tough to defend against them, especially because Zabani hasn't played for the last 3 games. That doesn't mean that he's dropped out of form, but since we signed him, he's been so consistent that from 69 games, he's played 68, and out of 68, he's been a starter on 67 games. And this is the first 3 games that he hasn't played, and it's only because of the red card. Otherwise, he would have been there on the pitch. So, score prediction, 3-1 to Bournemouth. I'd see Semenyo scoring 2 and Evan Nilsson scoring 1. And I won't do the prediction on the Brentford team. I'll leave that for you, my friend.
All right. I think in terms of Thomas Frank's style, I think it matches up quite well to Iraiola's style. I think you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys generally like to hit teams on the break. You've got quite a dynamic front line as well, a little bit like us. I think we will be happy at times in the game, especially if you're having a lot of possession, to sit back a little bit and try and counter you and maybe play you at your own game a little bit. And I think maybe that's also why we've had a bit of success against Bournemouth in the past. So I think that will work to an extent. I also think Bournemouth are probably better than they've ever been when we faced them before. So I'll go 1-1. I think it will be a close game. I think it could go either way. I think we will play well, but I think we'll fall just short in terms of doing enough to really drag us into that European group of teams. So I'll go 1-1. It's usually Wissa and Mbeumo who gets on the score sheet when Brentford score. Sharda does get a few as well. Let's go Wissa. Brian and Bumo can be frustrating at times. I think at his best he looks really good, but there are some games where he is just a bit quiet. That's
Hopefully that
probably
will
the
be the one on
difference.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's probably the difference between him and someone like Salah at Liverpool. Salah doesn't need to play well, but then he'll just do something.
Yeah,
Whereas
just
sometimes,
one move and that's it. He solved the game. I know. It's
yeah,
crazy.
sometimes Brian doesn't do that. He just doesn't really play well, and we can struggle creatively if they're not fully firing that front four. But again, I think here Bournemouth will want to attack. They'll want to take the game to us. They're at home. I don't think you guys will be sitting back too much, so I think there will be spaces for that front four. So in terms of the team, Flecken will be in goal. Christopher Ayer will probably be at right back. He's more of a traditional centre back, but with Aaron Hickey being out for it must almost be 2 years now, at least a year and a half. Michael Coyote, who we signed in January, he's a right back, but he's injured out. He's injured at the moment as well. So Christopher Ayers played most of the season at right back anyway, so he'll carry on at right back. Nathan Collins has been our best defender this season. He'll play at centre back. Pinnock's been playing alongside him, and Pinnock's been so good for Brentford for so long, but I think now he's showing signs of slowing down a little bit. So if Vandenberg's fit and he's back in training this week, I would probably bring Vandenberg back in instead of Pinnock alongside Collins. And Vandenberg did have a run in the team alongside Collins before Pinnock came back into the side and when Pinnock got injured. So I would go Collins, Vandenberg, the centre backs. Left back would be Keane Lewis Potter. Again, traditionally an attacking player, but has done so well at left back this season. I'm actually convinced he's a left back now. Like, he's done so well.
We had the same thing with Dango Taro when Kerkez was injured for a few games and we had no one to play on the left, and Dango as a winger played as a left back. Oh man, how good he was. It was crazy, and I was worried when Kerkez comes back, who's gonna play, because he is so good. He's done so well. But then we've seen Dango that can play a winger, a striker. When he scored 2 hat tricks as a striker, like crazy.
Yeah, obviously
crazy.
We've always had Rico Henry for many years
we must
now.
not forget
But
Henry.
again, he's been injured for the most part of well over a year now. He did come back very briefly, and he's now meant to be training again, but he's not going to be ready to start games just yet. So Keane Lewis Potter, yeah, he's been great at left back. If I'd give him a weakness to his game going forwards, normally he's not quite clinical enough in front of goal, so he's almost better suited to left back than he is at left wing sometimes. So yeah, he's done really well there to get a place in the team, and he's played nearly every game as well. So that's the back four and the keeper. Norgard will be the number 6. We're much better always with him in the side. He's a captain. You won't really notice him, but he'll just do all the little bits and
sweeping bit.
Yeah, the sweeping bits. Vitaly and Nelt will probably be alongside him. I quite like it when they play Jensen alongside him. I think Jensen is more creative from deeper positions. Vitaly and Nelt is probably a bit more like Norgard. When Norgard's injured, Nelt will kind of play that role. So as a defensive 2, Norgard and Yanelt, but I quite like it when Jensen comes in for Yanelt. I think it will be Yanelt, but I'd quite like to see Jensen in that deeper position to be more creative from a deeper area. Just ahead of them will be Mikael Damsgaard. He's got pretty much a free role. He's all over the pitch, and I think so many games this season he's been our best player.
So like a roaming central attacking mid, you'd say.
Yeah. He'll be everywhere, and nearly every game this season, he's been our best player, and everything good we do normally goes through him. He was a little bit quiet last week, which is rare for him. So I'm hoping he'll be back to top form this weekend, and then
maybe next weekend.
And then the front 3: Brian and Bumo, Kevin Schade, and Johan Wissa. Obviously, everyone knows about Bumo and Wissa. Kevin Schade's growing. He's still a young player, but in terms of his raw talent, he's quick. He's
shown some good potential.
Yeah, he's quick. He's quite good in the air.
Highlights, and he's got a very quick step.
You can tell in a few years' time. You can tell he's got everything he needs to become really, really good in terms of his height, his pace, his strength. He just needs to refine that, and he needs to just become more and more consistent. But I think he has been quite good in recent weeks. And that front 3, when they're on it, can be really, really good. The only thing I would say is we don't really have any depth on the bench at the moment. So Jensen will probably be on the bench as a more creative midfielder as well. But aside from that, we haven't got many options. It will be a lot of youngsters and B team players, unfortunately. The likes of Igor Thiago, who is the Ivan Toney replacement, is not around at the moment. Gustavo Nunez is another young winger we've never seen yet. The likes of Josh Da Silva at Brentford, who
We've got the
has been
same
good for us
problem.
in the past, but we've not seen him in a while. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of little injuries in the team. Fabio Carvalho now as well, who was the only
Oh yeah,
attacker we had on the bench, is
but
injured.
I mean, if because he used to play the same position that Damsgaard now is playing, because Damsgaard was more a winger.
Yeah, Damsgaard's always been better in the middle, I think. Carvalho was only signed in the summer, so has been a bit unfortunate to find himself behind Damsgaard in the form he's turned up in this season. But he was the only attacking option on the bench. If it wasn't quite working, and if we need to change it up, he's the only obvious senior attacking option we could bring on to do that.
Yeah.
And until Thiago comes back and until we get a few others back, I think we do struggle to change the game from the bench. So we've got to hope that, things go quite well from the start and that we don't need to change it from the bench too much.
Right, and just before we go, your star player on Saturday?
Mikhail Damsgaard, he's everywhere.
Damsgaard. Right, I'll go for Semenyo. I think Semenyo will get his confidence back in this game by scoring 2 goals and becoming the man of the match. And on that note, I think I'd like to finish this episode. Thanks so much, Daniel, for joining me today. It's been great. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed. And don't forget, Saturday, 5:30, up the cherries.
Up the bees.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.